Someone out there is dying right now, praying for what you're scrolling past. And yet here you are, heart still beating, hands still warm. The day has already begun to slip past you, and maybe you didn't even notice. You woke up, but did you awaken? You moved your body through the morning. You scanned the headlines, tapped the icons, checked your tasks. You tried to remember what you were supposed to care about. We've been taught that life is a puzzle to solve, that we can engineer happiness if we just control enough variables. If we just do enough, produce enough, protect enough, maybe, just maybe, we'll outrun the chaos. But we don't, because deep down we know the truth. We are not in control, and nothing reveals that faster than loss. You felt it, that subtle panic when things fall apart. The quiet ache behind your achievements. The fear that even on your best days, you're still missing something essential. That's not failure, that's awareness. The ancient ones had a phrase, memento mori, remember that you must die. Not to haunt you, but to free you. Because when you finally admit that life is fragile, it stops being something to conquer and starts becoming something to cherish. Right now, someone is holding the hand of the person they love most. And they know it's the last time. They're not asking for more hours. They're not thinking about their calendar. They're begging for just one more day. Not to fix anything, just to be, to sit in the warmth of a fading sun, to whisper words that still matter, to feel time without trying to use it. That's what we forget in the rush. That life is not something we earn, it's something we're given. And when we stop noticing the gift, we lose it, even while we're still alive. You don't need to be told how to live. You just need to remember that this moment will not come again. And maybe that's not something to fear. Maybe that's the one thing that can finally set you free. You did everything right. You followed the map, paid your dues, played by the rules. And still here you are, wounded, wondering, waiting for something to make sense. That's when the story fractures. When the bargain you thought you made with life begins to unravel. You were told, if I do good, life will be good to me. But it didn't go that way, did it? And now there's a quiet war inside you, between what you expected and what is. This is where resistance is born. Not from pain, but from the refusal to believe that pain belongs. We think if we can just rewrite the story, we can erase the ache. But the ache is the story. It's the place where the soul begins to speak. Zhuangzi knew this. He lived over 2,000 years ago in ancient China. When his wife died, his friends came to mourn with him. But instead of weeping, he sat drumming on a bowl and singing. They were horrified. They asked him how he could be joyful in the face of death. He answered, when she died, I knew it was her time to return to the great transformation. To resist it would be like mourning the fall of a leaf in autumn. That is Amor Fati, not blind acceptance. But love for even this, not because it feels good, but because it's true. Mitsuo Aida understood that too. A Japanese calligrapher and poet who knew death was near and still wrote as if each word could awaken a soul. He once said, because you are alive, everything is possible. He didn't mean productivity. He meant presence. Even as his body failed, he kept writing. Not to outlive death, but to live fully in its shadow. That's what surrender is. It's not giving up. It's finally laying down your sword and realizing the battle was never with the world. It was always with your own refusal to feel. We suffer more from our resistance than from our reality. We say this shouldn't be happening, but it is happening. And it's not happening to punish you. It's happening to shape you, to soften what's rigid, to open what's closed, to burn away what isn't essential so what's real can finally be seen. And here's the paradox no one teaches you. The moment you stop demanding a different life is the moment you begin to receive the one that was meant for you. Amor Fati, love your fate. Not because you understand it, but because you are still here. And somewhere inside this moment, Inside the confusion, the grief, the waiting is a gift. One you will only see if you stop trying to escape. So tell me, what part of your story have you exiled? And what might happen if, just for today, you welcomed it back? The doctor walked in slower than usual. You knew before he spoke. Sometimes the moment doesn't scream, it whispers. That's how it happens. Your world breaks not with thunder, but with stillness. A breath that doesn't come, a voice that says, "I'm sorry." And suddenly every plan, every project, every promise of later evaporates into air. This is the mirror, the one you spend your life avoiding. And when it finally finds you, it asks only one question: what will you do with what remains? The Stoics had a name for this reflection: memento mori. Remember, you will die, not to scare you, but to return you to what you forgot, that this breath, this hour, this life was never promised. Most people think they'll live twice. They hold off on tenderness, they delay wonder. They tell themselves they'll rest once they've earned it, but life doesn't wait. It never has. This breath you're taking now, it's not a rehearsal. It is the performance. And no one gets an encore. That's why the Tibetan monks meditate on death every single morning. Not because they're obsessed with dying, because they know that by remembering the end, you finally begin. You begin to notice the way your child's voice rises at the end of a laugh, the warmth of your lover's hand even when it's quiet, the softness of your own breath, still arriving, still here. Etty Hillesum understood this. She was 27, Jewish, brilliant, in love, and trapped in a Nazi transit camp waiting to be deported to her death. And yet, she wrote about the sky, the birds, the light that filtered through broken glass. Even here, she said, life is full of beauty. Even here I feel such gratitude. She didn't pretend it wasn't ending. She simply refused to stop living before it did. And that is the lesson. You cannot escape the ending, but you can refuse to let it steal the middle. This is not a theory, this is your life. If this were your last sunrise, would you still look at your phone first? If this were your final conversation, would you still hold back what matters most? If you truly knew that the clock was winding down, would you finally begin? Because the mirror does not lie, it does not wait. It does not care if you're ready. It simply asks, what would you do if this was your one more day? Maybe you're still resisting. Maybe part of you still wants to run, to rewind, to make it make sense. That's okay. Love rarely begins with understanding. Sometimes it begins with a question you've been too afraid to ask. What if this exact life, with all its scars and storms, is not a mistake? This is the heart of Amor Fati, not acceptance, love, not endurance, invitation. To look at every loss, every left turn, every break in your storyline and say, I will love this, not because it's easy, but because it's mine. We've been taught that to love our fate is to surrender our power. But Amor Fati is not weakness, it is fire. It is the moment you stop asking for another life and start burning with the one you have. Even the ashes, especially the ashes. Atta told a story once, a Sufi poet from Persia. 1,000 birds set out to find their king. They cross 7 valleys, search love, emptiness, bewilderment, nothingness, unity, and finally death. But when they arrive, they find only a mirror, no throne, no ruler, just their own reflection. And in that moment, they realized they were the ones they were seeking. That is the journey, not to escape fate, but to see it. To see yourself not as victim or survivor, but as the sacred storyteller of a path only you could walk. Look at your cracks, not with shame, but with reverence. Like kintsugi, the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery with gold. The bowl is not ruined, it is made more valuable. Because it broke, because it healed, because it now carries its history not as damage, but as design. That is what Amor Fati is asking of you. To love what came before, not despite it, but because of it. To stop chasing the life you thought you were supposed to have, and start honoring the one that's still unfolding in your hands. You don't have to feel ready. You don't have to understand the whole map. You just have to look down at your feet and say, I am still here. And because I am still here, I will love what has shaped me. Even the silence, even the fire, even the chapters I thought had nothing to teach me until they did. You don't need a different fate. You need a different relationship to it. You need to stop resisting the cracks and start illuminating them. Because the cracks are where the gold goes. And your story? It's already shining. Not because it's flawless, but because you stayed, and you still can. You've been told to fight, to push harder. Speak louder, stand taller, endure. The world loves resilience when it looks like resistance. When it looks like domination, but that isn't strength, that's armor. And armor isn't living, it's surviving. There's another kind of power. The kind that doesn't shout, the kind that doesn't need to win. The kind that sits down inside the chaos and whispers, I'm not afraid to feel this. That's the surrender most people never reach because they confuse it with losing. But surrender isn't defeat, it's alignment. It's choosing not to wrestle life to the ground, but to let it shape you. That's what Bob Swain chose. He was a police chief, a man of duty. Responsibility, control, and then the diagnosis came. Kidney failure, options limited, time uncertain. The doctors wanted to prepare him for dialysis, machines, hospitals, prolonged interventions. But Bob said no, he chose hospice. He chose his guitar, his family, his living room. He chose to be awake, not just biologically, but spiritually. I feel very, very at peace, he told them. Not bitter, not resigned, just ready. That's Amor Fati in action. Not in a quote, not in a philosophy book, but in a human being who looked death in the eye and said, you don't scare me anymore, because I've stopped trying to outlive you. We spend so much of our lives trying to avoid the pain, but the avoidance becomes the suffering. The resistance becomes the burden. You don't find peace by dodging fate. You find it by folding into it, by loosening your grip on how things should be, and finally embracing them as they are. There's a freedom there that nothing else can give you. Because once you stop resisting what's true, you stop wasting energy on what's impossible. And that energy, it becomes something new, compassion, stillness, presence. It becomes the kind of strength that doesn't need to prove itself. It simply exists, like a mountain that no longer moves. Like the ocean when it finally stops roaring and just breathes. So if you're tired of fighting, maybe it's not because you're weak. Maybe it's because the war was never yours to begin with. And your healing might begin the moment you set the sword down and decide, I won't run anymore because I'm still here. And that means I still have time to love what I was given, to breathe into the unknown, to walk into the storm with nothing left but my name, and know that it's enough. You don't need to win the battle. You just need to stop forgetting who you are. And remember, surrender is not the end of the story. It's the door you were always afraid to open, and now, here you are, standing in front of it, ready. This is the moment we miss, not the birth, not the death, but the breath in between, the ordinary holy breath of one more day. The sun still rises, even after your worst night. The heart still beats, even after breaking. The soul still whispers, even when you've stopped listening. And now you're listening again. That's everything. You don't need a map, you need a mirror, and it's already here, held in the light. Reflected in the face of someone you love. Echoed in the silence between distractions. This day, this one, is asking for you, not for your perfection, not for your productivity, but for your presence. What would change if you lived like this was your last sunrise? What would you say? Who would you forgive? What would you stop postponing? There is no grand revelation coming, no lightning bolt of purpose. There is only the clarity of knowing this is it. This is the miracle everyone's waiting for. It doesn't need to be louder. It doesn't need to be longer. It just needs to be noticed. So pause, touch the breath, name what you love. And let today be the altar, not a transaction, a devotion. Live like someone who understands that every minute is a closing door. Love like someone who knows they will not always have time. And give like someone who remembers what it's like to wish for one more chance, because somewhere someone is wishing for what you already have, one more hour, one more word, one more laugh. And you? You have it. You woke up. You're here. And the day hasn't ended yet, so take it. Let it be messy. Let it be imperfect. Let it be yours. And when the sun sets, let it find you with nothing left unspoken, no love withheld, no gratitude unoffered. No presents stolen by things that do not matter. This is not just another day. This is the one you will remember when everything else fades. Because you were awake for it. Because you said yes. Because you stopped waiting to live. You began. And in the end, when you're asked how you spent your time here, let your answer be simple. I lived. I loved. I didn't run. I was here. And that was always enough.